Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this session of Spokane Public Schools Keep Learning Series for Literacy. Today's lesson is for all our fifth graders out there, and any child who's interested is welcome to join us. My name is Mrs. Rich, and I'm a fifth grade teacher at Woodridge Elementary in Spokane Schools. I will be your teacher for this lesson. I'm so glad you are participating with me today. This is our first lesson in this series. Today, we'll be learning about author's purpose using text evidence to support our thinking. For today's lesson, you will need pencil and paper. I'll give you a moment to go ahead and gather your supplies. All right, today we're heading to the beach, friends. Lesson 1 is called The Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Let's start by taking a look at our focus today. So our focus is using evidence to support ideas. So authors use evidence in a nonfiction text to support ideas being presented. It also helps us believe in what the author is saying and allows the reader to follow the reasoning of the author. All right, this is how our lesson will flow today. We're going to take a look at both tests. We have an article and we have a website. We're going to practice using text evidence to support our ideas, and then you'll have an independent activity where you can give it a go on your own. So let's head over to our text and see what we're reading about today. All right, I'm really excited about our text. Now, a couple weeks ago, we went to the mountains. This week, we are heading to the beach. So I brought my shovel and my bucket, and we love to go to the beach. We go to Seaside, Oregon, and we go to Lincoln City every year. But what I've noticed over the past couple years is that the trash has been piling up on the beaches. So as we go to play volleyball or dig in the sand, we find trash along the way. Things like plastic bottles, and these rings from like the pop cans and stuff. And it's really hard sometimes to do our activities because we have all this trash around. And that's what we're learning about today, is that our oceans and our lands are filling up with trash. So our first article is called What a Dump. How do we get rid of so much plastic trash? So we're going to be focusing on those text features like the headings and the illustrations, pictures, captions, things like that to help us get our information today as well. The plastic predicament. Try to get through a day without using plastic. For that matter, try to go just 1 hour without it. From food and drink packages to cell phones and toothbrushes, plastic is nearly impossible to avoid. You can't even turn on a light without flicking a plastic switch. And then we have our illustration or our photo here. And the caption says, a seagull is entangled in that plastic six-pack ring. So that's what I showed at the beginning. What happens is you can see it's in his beak, and then they're unable to eat and they can't undo it from their heads. Plastic doesn't exist in nature. It's created from chemicals. Mass production of plastic started in the 1940s. Since then, it has become supremely popular, and for good reason. Plastic is lightweight, cheap, and convenient. It also lasts for a very long time. That can be good. You don't want your laptop to fall apart as you type, but it can be bad too. Plastic can remain in the environment for hundreds or even thousands of years. It piles up, filling garbage dumps and polluting the land and the ocean. Each year, more than 300 million tons of new plastic are manufactured worldwide. Clearly, we have a plastic problem. Trash soup. So this one kind of makes me go, I don't want to eat trash soup. I wonder what this is about. Natural products such as food, paper, and wood are biodegradable, and there's one of those pronunciation keys we've talked about before. They're broken down by bacteria and are absorbed by the environment. Plastic, on the other hand, is photodegradable. Light, which photo means light, from the sun causes it to break into smaller pieces over time. It never degrades completely, however. It often winds up littering the land and the ocean. So what happens is it breaks into smaller and smaller pieces, and we can't see it, but the ocean can feel the effects of it. In the Pacific Ocean, plastic waste is collected in a swirling soup of trash called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. That's where that title comes from. It's huge, 4 times as big as Texas. So think about the size of Texas on a map, and this garbage patch would be 4 of those areas of Texas put together. It's just one example of an ocean garbage patch. Plastic pollutes all the world seas. The United Nations Environment Program estimates that plastic kills 100,000 marine mammals and turtles and 1 million seabirds every year. Some become tangled in plastic debris, while others die after eating plastic trash that they can't digest. Scientists estimate that 80% of the ocean's plastic started out on land. Now the good news. You can help by tossing plastic into the recycling bin instead of the trash. A measly 28% of plastic bottles were recycled in 2009, according to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. You can help drive that number up. So that's almost 1 out of 4 plastic bottles or plastic items are not being recycled when they can be, which can help our environment. Here's a great illustration here of our 2 garbage patches. So they're going to give us further information in the text, but you can see how it shows the ocean currents and how they're swirling together to keep that garbage in there. So that's why the garbage doesn't float away. Sea of trash. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is 2 areas of floating garbage in the Pacific Ocean. So that's these 2 here. Each one is twice the size of Texas. So remember earlier they said that together it makes 4 times, but this particular area is twice the size and this particular area is twice the size of Texas. They lie within the North Pacific subtropical gyre, a ring of currents that turns clockwise in the ocean. Reduce and reuse. Still, recycling won't solve our plastic predicament by itself. Not all types of plastic can be recycled, and those that can may not be recycled in the way you'd expect. Plastic water and soft drink bottles, like I showed earlier, some of the most commonly used plastics in the United States are hardly ever turned into new bottles. Instead, they're recycled into carpet, furniture, and fleece clothing. When those products wear out, they often can't be recycled a second time. So then the predicament is, what do we do with those items once they've already been recycled once? So what can you do? One of the best ways to tackle the problem is to reduce the amount of plastic you use. Carry reusable water containers instead of single-use plastic bottles. Bring your lunch in a recyclable aluminum foil instead of a plastic sandwich bag. Ask your family to carry reusable tote bags to the grocery store. Every little bit helps. Plastic will probably always be a part of our lives, but by making smart choices, we can keep it from burying us. And I know in my house, I'm kind of a fanatic about the recycling. So I always carry a reusable bottle and we fill our water that way. Anything I can recycle, I do. I always take my own bags to the grocery store because I don't like to use the plastic bags unless I get paper. And then sometimes I put my recycling in that paper because that bag can be recycled as well. So that's our first article. Let's take a look at the website today. Our second piece of text this time is a website. So it's National Geographic. It's called The Great Pacific Garbage Patch. So this is going to tell us a little bit more about what we're learning today. And remember, we're thinking about how is the author supporting his or her ideas. So there's some great illustrations with captions. We're going to hit those at the end. We're just going to get right to the reading. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is a huge area of marine debris. Marine debris is garbage in the ocean. So that's what debris means, is garbage. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is the world's biggest area of marine debris. It is in the North Pacific Ocean. So remember, they told us that it's all over the different oceans and seas, but this particular one is the largest known. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch stretches from the west coast of North America to Japan. It is made up of 2 parts. One is the Western Garbage Patch near Japan. The other is the Eastern Garbage Patch between Hawaii and California. And on the other article, it showed us those pictures of where they were located. Strong ocean currents carry marine debris into the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Once there, the trash builds up over time. Plastics are the biggest problem. They do not wear down completely. They only break into smaller and smaller pieces. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is mostly tiny bits of plastic. These small pieces are called microplastics. They cannot always be seen. Often they just make the water look like cloudy soup. Larger things like fishing nets or shoes are mixed into that soup. So this article is telling us a little bit more of what that garbage looks like. It doesn't get any better beneath the surface of the water. The seafloor under the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is an underwater garbage heap. Over time, most marine debris sinks to the bottom. So more and more piles on, and then that just starts sinking down. Marine debris litters the ocean. No one knows for sure how much debris is in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Most of it comes from cities and towns in North America and Asia. The rest comes from ships. Plastics are the most common kind of marine debris. Most of this debris comes from plastic bags, bottle caps, plastic water bottles, and styrofoam cups. The sun breaks these plastics into smaller and smaller pieces. Even if they can't be seen, they are still there. Marine debris can be very harmful to marine life. For example, turtles often mistake plastic bags for jellies, their favorite food. Albatrosses mistake plastic pellets for fish eggs. Then they feed the pellets to their chicks. Often the chicks die. And when we go back up to the top to look at the pictures and stuff, they'll give us a picture of those little pellets. Seals are also in danger. They can get tangled in plastic fishing nets. Seals often drown in these nets. So they're unable to get out and free themselves, and then they can't feed themselves, and then they end up dying and drowning. Marine debris is affecting the entire food chain. For example, algae are underwater plants. Plankton are tiny critters that eat algae to survive. Plankton get eaten by other animals, like whales. But microplastics stop sunlight from reaching underwater algae. Without sunlight, the algae won't grow and spread. Without algae, plankton won't have enough food. And without plankton, whales won't have any food either. So you can see how everything's interconnected. One thing gets broken from that chain and everything else is affected by that. There's no way to stop that. Plastics also contain harmful pollutants. These dangerous chemicals are poisoning the water. They are also making fish and marine mammals such as whales and seals very sick. What to do about the patch? Cleaning up marine debris is not easy. Many microplastics are the same size as small sea animals. Nets that can scoop up garbage would catch these animals too. In any case, the ocean is just too big to clean. Scientists say it would take 1 year for 67 ships to clean up just a tiny part of that North Pacific Ocean. They say the best answer is to stop throwing away so much plastic. And in the other article, it said, recycle. Recycle what you can. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is a soupy collection of marine debris, mostly plastics. I've come back up to the top, and we're going to take a look at the different illustrations and pictures that we have, and we're going to take a look at what information it's provided us. So this is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is a collection of marine debris in the North Pacific Ocean, also known as the Pacific Trash Vortex. The garbage patch is actually two distinct collections of debris bounded by the massive North Pacific subtropical gyre. And so this is similar to the other illustration we saw. Here's the one by Hawaii, and then the one over by Japan. And then it circles around and it keeps everything in there. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch sits near the surface of the ocean. Dense debris can sink centimeters or even several meters beneath the surface, making the vortex's area nearly impossible to measure. So they know that it's getting so deep that they can't even send people to figure out the depth of it, to figure out how much garbage is actually in there. Most debris in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is plastic. Plastic is not biodegradable, meaning it does not disintegrate. It simply breaks into tinier and tinier pieces known as microplastics. Microplastics of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch can simply make the water look like cloudy soup. And you can see how tiny they are, and you can see how birds might mistake those for little sea creatures that they can feed to their babies that end up killing them. Mixed in with the microplastics are larger pieces of plastic. Most plastics are refuse or garbage from land activities in North America and Asia. Some plastics are accidentally dumped from ocean-going vessels. All the plastics on this page were culled from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. You can see all different kinds of things in there, flip-flops and plastic bottles and toys and toothbrushes. That's a lot of garbage. Marine debris can prevent algae and plankton, the photosynthetic producers in the marine food web, from receiving enough sunlight to create nutrients. When these tiny organisms are threatened, the entire food web is put at risk. First-order consumers that eat the plankton, such as jellies, second-order consumers that eat the jellies, and such as turtles, and apex predators such as sharks. And you can see here how sunlight just doesn't have the ability to get through, how it causes such disturbance to that food chain. So we've looked at our articles, and now we're ready to head back and do some work. Before we get to the work part, I wanted to remind you of what we're going to be looking at today. So we're focusing on the author supporting evidence. We're looking at headings for clues, because remember that gives us an idea of what those sections are about. We're going to paraphrase by combining information from the text into sentences written in your own words. So we're taking several bits of information and pushing it together so we can kind of synthesize. And it's really important to use at least 2 pieces of text support to demonstrate your thinking. So here's our question for today. What evidence is provided in the text, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, to support the idea that marine debris is devastating to ocean life? So we're just looking at the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, that website that we looked at. So first thing I do is look at the heading, marine debris litters the ocean. I think that's going to give me the information. So I just pulled an excerpt out of that so we could take a look at it. No one knows for sure how much debris in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Most of it comes from cities and towns in North America and Asia. The rest is from ships. Okay, so far that's not showing us that it's hurting ocean life. Plastics are the most common kind of marine debris. Most of the debris comes from plastic bags, bottle caps, plastic water bottles, and styrofoam cups. The sun breaks these plastics into smaller and smaller pieces. Even if they can't be seen, they are still there. Still no information on marine life. Marine debris can be harmful to marine life. So that topic sentence right there is saying, oh, listen up, because here comes our information. For example, turtles often mistake plastic bags for jellies, their favorite food. So that's one thing we're going to keep in there. So I've highlighted that for us. Another thing that I used was seals. Seals are also in danger. They can get tangled in plastic fishing nets. Seals often drown in these nets. Now notice I didn't highlight everything, just seals, so I know the topic. They get tangled in the fishing nets and they drown. So I'm going to put all of that together. And then we're going to skip down here. Plastics can also contain harmful pollutants. These dangerous chemicals are poisoning the water. They're also making fish and marine mammals such as whales and seals very sick. So I want to just pull out the very most important information to combine. So plastics contain the harmful pollutants. It's poisoning the water. That makes fish and mammals sick. Now, are there additional things I could have used? Sure, there's information about the albatrosses and how they use the pellets and then their chicks die. That could have worked as well. Could I have talked about the food chain and how the algae doesn't get to grow, which means the plankton aren't able to eat the algae, and that affects the whales? Absolutely. I just picked some different things from different paragraphs. So let's see what comes next. Once I have highlighted my information, decided what I'm going to use, now I need to form my paragraph. I always start my paragraph with part of the sentence from the question. So A, it makes sure it's a complete sentence and somebody knows what I'm talking about. The author uses many examples to prove that marine garbage is causing great harm to ocean life. Using a transition. First, he describes how turtles think plastic bags are really jellyfish and end up eating them, which causes them harm. So I use this information here. I altered it a little bit to put it in my own words because I'm not quoting it exactly. And then I laid that out. He goes on to explain, so I'm continuing, oh, here's another idea, that seals can drown after getting stuck in plastic fishing nets because they are unable to untangle themselves. Okay. Finally, cluing in that here comes my last piece of evidence. Plastic bags and bottles are leaking poison into the water, which is making a lot of the ocean animals sick. So I used all 3 pieces of evidence here. I combined sentences and ideas to make them my own, and then I made sure to use transitions so I could let the reader know that I was carrying on with my ideas and when I was finishing up. All right, friends, now it's your turn. According to the article, What a Dump, how can we help to stop the Great Pacific Garbage Patch from growing? That's what we're looking for. How do we stop it from continuing to grow? You'll need to answer the question on lined paper or type it out and use at least 2 pieces of evidence. So hopefully you had a great opportunity to learn from our example, and I hope that you get the opportunity to try this on your own and give it a go. It was great working with you today, and I look forward to seeing you on our next lesson.